Okay, well, thank you everybody for coming. My name's Rebecca. I work here at Samy's in camera sales slash curating, teaching, and now introducing Brad. Brad was featured here in our Leica Boutique. If you had a chance to see the film, if you haven't had a chance to make sure you read on the way out. Photos are hanging in the Leica area. And I thought it was great that Brad wanted to come in and talk a little bit about his work. About his style of work. So, you want to introduce yourself, Brad?
I'm Brad. Thanks for coming. I'm surprised at the turnout.
Cool. All right, let's get started then. So,
Yeah.
why don't you tell us a little bit about what got started, getting started in photography?
I've got little notes because I can't remember anything anymore. I think photography has always been something that's always been a part of my life since I was a kid. You know, it came in and out of my life. I think my first camera was a Pentax. I had a little dark room and I'd get away from it. And now, as I got older and had a career in the movie business, writing and directing, I think that was just a natural extension of storytelling. I mean, when you boil it down, when you're doing the kind of photography that I have eventually became attracted to, you're trying to capture emotional moments with people and make a connection, and that should form a story. So in the 90s, when digital photography came out, that was really interesting to me because I had just found the process so long, shooting film and developing, and this kind of, I could scratch that itch of that immediate gratification. I could take something, look down and say, wow, that's what I was looking for. And so from that point on, I've been shooting steadily since like 97.
What started specifically in street photography?
So in 1997, I was living in Paris. I was married to a French girl. And there's a very famous French photographer, Jean-Pierre Charbonnet, and she knew him. And so set up a dinner one night in the Marais, and I show up, and he's got his, you know, he died like a few years after I met him. He was 80 something when he died, but shows up with his M3 and just this wild character of a guy. And we're all talking about different things. And then my wife says, but you know, Brad's a photographer. I'm like, oh my God. And he goes, oh, really? What do you shoot? And I go, well, landscape. That's all I did then. Anything that was not human, I was shooting it. And so he said, come to my apartment tomorrow, and we'll talk about photography. And he had a great apartment on Rue de Rivoli by the river. And it's just what you would imagine a guy who shot for 50 years apartment would look like, full of cameras and books and photographs. And he said, you want to go shoot? Did you bring a camera? And I said, yes. And I had the new Epson digital camera. It was 6 megapixels. It was like shit. And when he saw it, he looked like he threw up in his mouth a little bit. So we went outside, and this was like a transformational moment in my life. I said, what did we shoot? And he goes, we shoot the street. And I literally thought he meant we were going to take pictures of the road and the curb and the cobblestone. And this heavy-set woman was walking down the street carrying a bag of groceries, and he just stepped in front of her and took her picture. And I thought that was the most amazing thing I'd ever seen in my life, that somebody would have the cojones to do that. And I was about to say something when he goes, your turn, and he pushed me in front of this guy, and I just took a picture like this. It turned out to be his nose at the bottom of the frame and just a bunch of sky. But the amazing thing was the guy just walked by me. He didn't look at me. He didn't say anything. I think in a lot of ways for street photographers, that's the hardest thing to get over, that initial fear of intruding on someone's face and taking a picture. So we shot for a while, and then I remember saying to him, well, what are you going to shoot? He stopped and he looked at me and he goes, well, what do you care what I shoot? You want to shoot like me? You want to be like me? There already is a me. Go find your you. And that has stuck with me since that day on when I started street photography. Is those few words of go find your you is quite a journey, quite a process. And I can only say maybe for me in the last 5 years, I have finally found the style that I started to try to get all those years ago. Oh yeah.
since you talked a little bit about what street photography is, we're getting shoved into what street photography is. What has it become for you? What does it mean now?
Well, like I said, I think probably as I talk a lot today, you're going to hear me draw a lot of correlations between photography and my career as a writer and a director, because, like I said, they're all storytelling. When I write a screenplay, it takes me 3 to 4 months to write it. When I direct a movie, it's a year of my life. When I shoot a photo, I instantly get to see if that story is there. So that's what initially attracts me to it. You know, I've got great respect for all types of different photographers, you know, like Joe Grimes and people who like, you know, paint with light and shoot commercials and fashion. But that's a whole different thing than street photography. You know, this guy gets up every morning and he knows where he's going. He knows what the location looks like. He knows what the background looks like. He knows what the model looks like. He knows what the model's wearing. He knows what the makeup looks like. He knows where the light's going to be. And he's got 3 to 4 hours to get that shot. We've got seconds. You see somebody on the street walking towards you, that's it. They're gone. That shot's gone. So either you know your gear and you know what you want and can form and frame, compose, light, and get a decent shot with an emotional connection. That's the challenge to me of street photography. That's why I think that, I'm not going to say that it's the hardest thing in the world, but to me, you're just getting little moments of people's lives and hopefully capturing them at that decisive moment that conveys a strong emotional connection to somebody. Let me ask this. How many people here consider themselves street photographers? We're going to get to that later, okay? So, yeah, I think that's basically it. I think that street photography is just documenting scenes from everyday life in a way that the vast majority of people who view those images connect with them. They have an emotional connection to what you're doing, you know. And I think that in final analysis of photography, what we're all striving to do is make photographs, not snapshots. There's a big difference between the two.
So for those of us who raise our hand, what makes a good street photograph? What makes it a photograph, not a snapshot?
So there's photography is weird as an artistic pursuit in that if I write a screenplay or he writes a screenplay, we're just writing a screenplay. If you paint a painting, you're just painting a painting. If you sculpt something, you're just sculpting something. It's all done with your hands. Photography is one of the few things where you actually have to rely on a machine to create a piece of art. So you have the technical aspect of it, which is pretty, for me, mathematical. Once you get that down, once you know your f-stops, your depth of field, you know, controlling light, you should be able to take a decent picture. The hard part, the creative part, is getting that emotional connection with the person. You know, like Cartier-Bresson said, the decisive moment. And you could take click, click, and click, and between click 2 and click 3, there was the photo, but you missed it. You just didn't get it. They were looking here, they were looking here. The shot when they were looking right in the lens and forming that connection, it is gone. So I'm going to get into something later about that, but that's basically it.
So one of the photos that's on your slide, actually a couple of the photos on your slide that was specifically the stairs in Hanoi that you shot. One of the ones that's in our Leica Boutique, if you haven't seen it. There's an interesting story with that because you found the location, but not the photograph. Not yet.
So I think a good exercise for street photographers or photographers in general is not just to think about photography when you got a camera in your hand. I walk around all the time and I look at something that's interesting and then I look at it as a photo. I kind of know the photo I want to take before I even lift my camera to take the photo. I know what the shot's going to be. I know what I think I'm going to go for an emotional connection. So, but sometimes it works backwards. So I was walking down the street in Hanoi And I saw that, in Hanoi and in Vietnam, when you walk down the streets, everybody's door is open. And you walk past these little snippets of everybody's life is on display. You can see them in their living rooms. You can see them eating dinner with their families. So I walked by this staircase and the light was just incredible. The contrast of light, the shadows, and the staircase was lit, but it needed a person. So I sat there for an hour and a half waiting for somebody to come down the stairs. And, of course, when she came down the stairs, I was like doing something like she's halfway down the stairs. Like, no, wait, go back up the stairs and come back down again. So, but that's a good way to approach street photography, is to see something that you think makes an interesting background and then form your picture around that. I don't know if you guys know, how many of you know a photographer named Alan Schaller? Okay. So, I know Alan and I've shot with him before, and he does incredible, I don't even know if you would call it fine art photography. But what he does is that he's always got somebody in his shot, somebody moving through the shot, somebody walking with that perfect stride. It just adds so much more to a photograph. It's very hard to have, I think, something that you can classify as street photography if you don't have a person in it. And then it really is just shooting a building. So when I saw this thing in Hanoi, it was just a question of waiting. And several of my photos are just staking out something that I know is going to be a good location and waiting for the right person to walk through that shot, or maybe finding somebody and ask them if they'll walk through that shot.
So other than waiting, what else do you do to find an image that's going to tell you a good story?
I think it depends on where I'm shooting. So I've got my buddy Mark back there and we go downtown LA a lot and shoot. And that thing about downtown LA is you never know what you're going to get down there. Don't even try to imagine what you might get down there. It's just a smorgasbord of different crazy people and life going on and people arguing. But if I go someplace, like if I'm in Asia, well, there's certain things that I can expect to shoot that I know I'm going to shoot, probably Asian people. And you're going to probably be shooting people that are a little more on the poor side. So you have an idea of what you're doing. So you go out and you're trying to find a story. I wish I could say it was as easy as to say that you know what you're going to find, but I find just keep an open mind. Don't try to go out and look for something. You go to look for it, you're not going to find it. Just keep your mind open. You see it, you should know it. You should know it. You should be able to say, I want to photograph that person. That's a great look. And, hopefully they're going to be able to give you the emotional connection that you need. Or you see something, a scene going on in the street, and you move in and you take a picture of that, and hopefully you capture at the right moment that the emotion that you want to convey in that thing is. I think there's a tendency in street photography to overthink it too much. Everybody has a little bit different style. That's why when Mark and I shoot, it's great because I'm very close in. I shoot within like 3 feet of you. Mark kind of hangs back with his 28 where nobody can see him. But yeah, I think that's the best way to approach it.
So another set of images that we have up in the boutique are these, not all families, but people in different parts of Asia that have emulated what we know as LA culture and LA Texas culture.
Yeah.
And those are some interesting stories.
So I was going over to Asia, and how many people know the photographer Esteban Oriel? You guys should know him. It's great. And he and I have recently become friends over the last year and a half. And Estevan or Oriol. Yeah. Okay. Just find me after. But yeah, great photographer. Been shooting for 40 years. Mexican, really into lowrider culture, hip hop culture. Very LA. So he said, hey, you should check out some of my buddies, these, when you go to when you go to Thailand, these real hardcore criminals. And I go, yeah, just what I want to do. And so he said, no, that's okay. You'll be fine. They probably won't kill you. So I went there and met these guys, and immediately what I was struck about, there's this subculture that I found there in Vietnam and in Manila, where they emulate Chicano culture. They wear the flannels and the baggy pants, and they got the tattoos, and they sit there and they watch YouTube all day, learning gang signals. So and they're so naive about the whole thing. Like I'm going, you ever come to LA and start flashing those signals downtown LA, you're going to get a beat down like you have no idea. They actually, one of the guys, just to get off topic for a minute, he goes, hey, can you get me a Mongols jacket? And I said, what do you want a Mongols jacket for? He goes, I want to wear it. And I said, you want to get killed wearing Mongols colors without permission? But some of the guys, when I got to Saigon, I met this other group through Esteban, heavily tattooed, but they're all barbers. They all walk in the barber shop, and the theme of the barber shop is Chicano culture, but they look like heavy-hitting gang members. In fact, if you go through some of these photos behind me and try to guess which ones are barbers and which ones are legit gang members, you got one guy who cuts hair, and the next guy next to him has killed 3 people. But you can't tell them apart. Oh, they were? Okay. Well, how's that for time?
So you're talking about you and Mark have a different approach. What's your preferred distance for shooting? Like, teach us a little bit about your approach, the distance you shoot from, what focal length do you use to do that?
So I shoot primarily 35, and for everything that's going on the street. If I'm going to do a portraiture, then I might swap over to the 50. For me, and this is just my opinion, so you don't have to agree with me, that street photography is a very specialized thing. I go downtown, Mark and I will see some guy standing across the street. He's got a 200 millimeter lens, and then you bump into him later, and I go, so what do you shoot? He goes, I shoot street photography. And I'm like, you know what you don't? If you're across the street it's voyeurism. That's not street photography. I think for me personally, anything over 50 mil is not street. It's really not. It's something else. When you got to be in it, you got to run the risk of them looking at you going, what are you taking my picture for? That's part of the challenge of it. You're immersing yourself into the scene, and that shows in the work. If you're standing, 100 yards away taking a picture, you might as well just be in your apartment shooting out the window. I think we're going to get into that in a bit. Yeah. I got a lot to say about that.
Actually, well, that was going to be the next one.
Oh, cool.
If you've seen it up here, there's a couple photographs in the slideshow of monks praying.
Oh, yeah.
Which looks like a very, very intimate moment.
Yeah, that was.
My question. Did you ask them?
So I went to this temple one day to shoot these monks, and this guy walks out, and I've been a Buddhist for a long time, so I wanted to just go see these things. And he comes out and he's on his iPhone, which I'm not sure you're supposed to really have as a monk. But he starts to talk to me. He speaks English really well. And where are you from? And I go, I'm from LA. And he goes, well, what do you do? And I go, I'm a writer director. And he goes, well, what's your name? And I tell him my name. And I see him on his iPhone. He's talking to all these other monks, and they're speaking Thai, but I don't understand. But every other word is Hollywood, da 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 da, Madonna, Hollywood, And I'm going through my IMDb account. So he walks over to me and he goes, why don't you come? I'll pick you up at the hotel with your friends tomorrow with the van, the company van, and it'll take you out to all these temples outside the city. So we spent the day together, and we went back to the temple. We ended up in his room, this little dormitory, really nothing. And he started to pray, and there's just one candle going. And so I said, can I take your picture? And he said, yeah. And that was shot with this camera, just by one candlelight at 12,500 ISO. So, it's very difficult to, when you're that close to a subject, you're going to ask permission. I mean, they've got to, he knows he's getting a photo taken, so he's holding that pose for you. The other times on the street, when you see somebody walking by or bits of business or people arguing or hugging or kissing or whatever, then, you just take the photograph.
The staircase with the person coming down the stairs.
Oh.
So, asking for permission. That leads us to the flip side of this, which is
All right.
there is some criticism of street photography. That it is intrusive.
Yep.
That it is a little bit too personal sometimes. But the flip side of that is that there is some permission going on, but also can you talk a little bit about some of that criticism about street photography?
So this is like a very hotly contested thing from street photographers. I know great street photographers that feel that everything's on the table. You're out on the street and you're doing something, I'll take your picture because, it's my First Amendment right. I got other people that are very respectful, constantly ask for everything they do. I'm sort of somewhere in the middle. Street photography by definition is an intrusive thing. You're intruding on people's lives. You're taking little moments of their life and recording it. They could be arguing, they could be laughing, whatever it is, you're injecting yourself into that. I think where the exceptions to that is for me, I was doing a shoot in Manila a couple of weeks ago, and there was this drag queen who I sort of met on Instagram because I was doing a series on beauty. And I said, I'd love to photograph you. And he said, well, why don't you come to the club I work at, when, like around 8 o'clock, because I'll come in early and I'll get into character. And so we went out in front of the gay bar that he worked at. And I would think so I'm shooting him. Now, when I took a photograph of him, if some guy walked out and I would snap and got him in the shot, and he came up to me and he said, listen, nobody knows that I'm out. My parents don't know that I'm out. So what do you do in that situation? I mean, you be a hard ass. The odds, I think, of his father actually getting on my Instagram account are pretty remote, but you have a responsibility then because this is somebody's life. So what's the upside? Unless it's an incredible photo, which still you got to think about, this is somebody's life. So if I take somebody's photo downtown LA and they come up to me and they're respectful and they ask me to erase it, first thing I do is I check to see how good the photograph is. And if it's not good, then why argue? There's just some guys that argue because this is my First Amendment right. You're also going to learn when you get into street photography is nobody knows the law. You're going to hear, you don't have the right to take my photograph. I didn't sign a waiver. That's all BS. You don't need their permission. You don't need a waiver. Anybody on a public street is fair game. But I think there is a responsibility. There were these other two women. I was down. I don't know if I was with Mark or something. We were downtown and I did a shot and these two African-American women that living on the street came up to me and they were like, do you mind erasing that? And I said, well, why? And they said, because we're abused women and we've run away from our husbands and they don't know where we're at. And your shot probably says the street signs and everything. And, I doubt they're going to find it, but they could find it. Now, what's that photo worth? And what if you heard that was something that led some guy to find them? So for me, it's just not worth it for that. If you're like in a fist fight with somebody, if you're stupid enough to get in a fight in the street and I take a picture of you and you say erase it, I'm probably going to say no. When I'm filming, there's a shot in there, I don't know if it's in there with all the cops and fire department guys standing around that African American with his face in the gutter. I mean, that's a really powerful shot, And the next question I think we're going to get into also is I get flamed a lot on Instagram, not a lot, but to the point where I usually don't respond, but recently I did. I took some pictures of these Filipino kids and I get this rant from some woman, you white, imperialistic, privileged, come over here. This is poverty porn. And that's for me, it just sets me off, this whole term of poverty porn. She goes, when you sell your prints, do they share in the proceeds? They don't even have a cell phone. You think they have a Venmo account? I'm going to wire the money over there. I give them money. I buy them food, and if they're with their parents, I give them more money so it doesn't get squandered. But more than that, should a war correspondent not take a photograph of a dead body because it might offend somebody? Should a news reporter documenting a house that's burned down, should he not photograph the people crying because they've lost their home? You know, photography is at its absolute best when it shines a light on social issues. And my intent is not to shock you or make you think how cute these kids are. My intent is to make you see that there's a lot of poverty and there's injustice in the world. And not everybody is privileged to have the kind of lives that we have. That's the takeaway. When you see somebody, when I've done a shot downtown LA where somebody's passed out on the street, that's the world that we all walk by. So many people, you know, going downtown a lot and shooting, you know, you make relationships down there. You know homeless people. You know the vendors. And on that one day, I don't know where that photo is, but I actually knew the woman that had passed out on the street and waited with her until the cops came. And she's a hot mess, you know, does meth and drinks too much, but she's still a human being. But when the cops came and I took that photograph, this woman walked by, this girl, and she went like, "You're an asshole." And I said, "You know what? You wouldn't need, I'm here. I stopped. I waited for the police to come by. And if I didn't take a photograph, you would have said nothing as you walk off to your next decaf macchiato latte." That's the thing, is that we are out there taking pictures and hopefully are going to make people, you know, if my photograph makes you want to donate to some kind of charity to help people, then that's the power of what a photograph can do.
So typically when you, let's say, obviously if you don't ask for permission, then you can make it. If you ask for permission, you don't have to invite
A waiver?
waiver, right?
No, you don't need to. Not on the street. If you're doing a shoot with a model, yeah, then I would get a waiver. But
so let's say you don't have a waiver with verbal. Is there a law against you selling that print with that image in there?
well, my understanding is you can sell the print. What you cannot do is then put it in a Coca-Cola ad.
Right.
You can't do that because then they need to be compensated for that. But if you want to just make a print and, you know.
In any commercial value, Coca-Cola, you're talking about, thousands of dollars or whatever it is. But,
If you want to put it in a book, that's fine. If you want to put it in a print and sell those prints, you're fine. You don't need to compensate them for that. Yeah.
You don't need to black and white.
Yeah, only black and white.
Mhm.
So, for me, black and white just has always spoken to me. There's just something about this, a power to it. The photographer Ted Grant once said that photographers who photograph in color photograph clothing, and photographers who photograph black and white photograph souls. And to me, that speaks to me. That really does speak to me. And you hear a lot of people say, well, I shoot color, and then if I didn't get the shot, then I convert it to black and white, which is really an affront to every black and white photographer, because that's an art form in itself. I just got back from Peru, where everybody is dressed in colorful reds and vibrant colors, and I shoot the whole thing in black and white. So it adds a whole nother challenge because you're actually handicapping yourself. You're limiting yourself to tones of gray only. So the power has to come through the contrast, the dynamic range, and the connection with the subject. I think in many ways, in my opinion, it's a more challenging art form.
If you're going to photographs art or something like that, it's very colorful.
Yeah.
So anywhere else, I'm going to in June. So because black and white does have soul, but then I saw an American Indian at the Women's March. Great facial colors and everything else. It looks great in black and white, but in color, it really spoke to me.
Well, yeah. Okay, that's personal preference, but it spoke to you. Why? Because of the clothing.
Well, I feel your shoulders and face.
Yeah. Look, I'm saying it just represents a whole separate set of challenges. You're limiting yourself in black and white because, like, this camera only shoots black and white. It only shoots black and white.
Do you have a digital camera?
Yeah. Is that a 246?
No.
What is that? Okay. So yeah, so this doesn't have a color sensor. It only sees light, which means I can shoot in low light better than that camera can because I'm not going through a bare color filter. And the new one that, right, yeah. So that's the advantage, one advantage of shooting in black and white. But it also gives this camera for me gives a whole kind of tonality in black and white that you just can't do from a color camera and then, going into Photoshop and changing it into a black and white photo.
Even if you shoot in monochrome on a Leica?
Do we?
Even if you shoot in monochrome on a Leica?
No,
It's
because
different.
it's the camera is then taking that and interpolating it into a black and white image. But it's still, so in other words, how if you shoot a colored image and you go into Photoshop and you can change the tonality of the photo by using the color sliders? Yeah, that doesn't work for this camera because there is no color. So you've got to get it as good as you can in camera and then play with it in post. But the new monochrome M10 monochrome is coming out as soon as you get one in. That camera is unbelievable because this is basically an old 240 or 262 sensor, or even maybe I think the M10 sensor, that they just took the color array off of it. But the new M10 monochrome is specifically designed from the ground up to be the first standalone black and white sensor. And I was at the Leica store the other day, tested out, took it in the bathroom because it's the only place that was really low light. It was dark, just had a little bit of light. And I took this shot, and it's the best toilet bowl shot you'll ever see. Well, what's amazing, and I'll show you guys afterwards, is I don't know how many of you can see this. I'll show you because I just.
The toilet bowl?
Yeah, I'm trying to hold it up here. Well, the amazing thing for you guys sitting up in the front row.
And we will open this up to Q&A afterwards.
Yeah.
I see a lot
Well, I
of
don't
hands
see it
trying
now.
to go up.
Here. So that's the toilet bowl. But if you look at this, can you see that? You see that? That's 100,000 ISO.
Wow.
And there's hardly any grain in the entire shot. So that's what this new camera does. That's just incredible. That, you basically don't even need a flash anymore. I got a good buddy of mine who has a band and I'm going to go out on the road with him and shoot backstage. And with this, I could be shooting at 50,000 ISO all day long and just be able to nail these shots.
That's okay.
If you blow it up, you're looking at a cell phone or Instagram, it's small, but if you blow it up, then you see the grain.
Yeah, but the grain is so homogeneously diffused over the photograph that it just looks like you're shooting Tri-X. Really, it's hardly noticeable at all.
So you said usually people when do street photography, they do aperture priority, and then they have an ISO auto and set a maximum at whatever 60, whatever it is, and then they set a shutter speed, whatever you want to do. Do you have a maximum ISO that you use?
Well, it depends. If I'm shooting outside in bright sunlight, then again, one thing about the Leicas I find when I'm on auto ISO, it's very conservative. It's always going to try to find the lowest ISO that it can. So I set it up at the lowest ISO, and then I tell it that I won't let it drop below, say, 1/125th of a second from the shutter speed, because I don't want camera shake. And some of the things they're talking about the new Leica is because it's 40 megapixels that people are saying, well, they get some camera shake when they take a photo. My advice to them would be stop moving your hands. You'll probably go a long way. No, it's just so I'm going to set this one probably to have a minimum of 1/250th and see how that goes. Because I'm not really afraid to let the ISO go up into 25,000 right now. Because it has such a beautiful grain. It's not like noise where you go, wow, that's really noisy. It looks like real grain as if you were shooting Tri-X film.
So just one more on the permissions and the criticism.
Okay.
What advice do you have for somebody trying to get into street photography who might be a little bit afraid of approaching strangers?
So I have some friends that I've taken and introduced into street photography over the years, and almost the same. It's great fear, because it's a thing, you know. Hey, boom, step in front of somebody and take their picture, or even walk up to a stranger and say, hey, can I take your picture? And then usually they're going to say, why? And then you say, because you've got a great look. Who doesn't want to hear that? Who doesn't want to hear that they have a great look? Then they're like, okay, sometimes they're busy. Sometimes they just don't have the time. Can I take a picture? No. Okay, no. Move on to the next person. Most people are very flattered. But the thing about that is you got to always remember that it's constantly moving. These people are on their way somewhere. They're not going to give you a lot of time. You know, they're going to give you a few minutes. And newer street photographers, one of the biggest mistakes I always see them do is that they get, wow, somebody actually said yes, and now I've got to get this over with. So they raise their camera and, you know, they take that shot and then they get home and it's not framed right and there's camera blur. One of the main things I would say that it took me years to learn is there is very little difference between this and this. Maybe a half a second makes all the difference in the world in taking a photograph. I know that, you know, you're aware of getting them going on their way, but just take a breath. I always get up there, take a breath. Now, one thing about the Leica that I like is that for all this money, it only shoots black and white, and it doesn't have manual focus. It don't have autofocus. It's only manual focus. But to me, that's part of the reason that I love this camera, because it forces me to slow down. It forces me when I'm like this. So what's your name? Okay. Where are you from? Okay. So now you're relaxing, but now I'm looking, but I'm not just looking at you. And a lot of mistakes that people do, look at the background. Background's going to make or break a photo. If you're shooting a guy with a white shirt and a white hat and he's standing against a background like that, that's a good shot. You're going to have a lot of contrast. But if his head is being swallowed up by a bright window behind him, then your eyes are going to be drawn off of him because our eyes are attracted to contrast. Take a moment and say, would you mind moving? Can we go over here? Sure, they'll move over there. Then, okay, the light's not that great. So force yourself not just to look at the person, but the background, where is the light coming from? But there's only so much you can do in street photography with light. If you bump into a photo that's going to be an amazing photo, but it's 12 noon, well, you can't do too much about the fact that they're going to have those raccoon eye shadows, you know. But what you can do is say, can you kind of look up like you're thinking or something and have them point their face towards the sun so that the sun is going to do all the lighting for you. I just see over and over again that people get so nervous that somebody has stopped. They stopped for a reason. They stopped because they want you to take their photograph. So instead of them getting out of there in 3 minutes or 4 minutes, you get out of there in 5 minutes. But that's going to make the difference between whether you have a usable portrait or not. So I think one thing you do on the street is that you always give them your card. Say, if you want a copy of the photo, contact me, and I'll shoot you a JPEG, which I frequently do. I think that, you know, they're giving you something of themselves by stopping and letting you take their photograph. That's not a big deal to do that for them. Plus, I think it leaves a good taste in their mouth, so the next photographer that approaches them, they'll be more amenable to maybe helping them out.
So how do we get better? How does one get better at shooting?
You shoot. You, like anything, you shoot. You shoot, and you pay attention to not only what you did that screwed up a shot, but you pay attention to what you did right to make a good shot. Sometimes you get a shot and it's luck. It shouldn't be luck. It really shouldn't be luck. It should be that you know what you're doing and you're honing your craft by saying, if I move him a little bit more here, or there's too much light bleeding around the corner, so just move in a little bit away, you're going to get that shot. I also think it's important that, yes, it should be fun. Personally, I'm one of those guys that when I go out and shoot, I like to hang out with my friends and walk around and talk about photography and get something to eat and then, and learn. Try to find people to shoot with who are as good or better than you. That's key. That's key. It's people that, if you're shooting with people who aren't as good as you or just as good as you, you're not learning anything, My, again, my buddy Mark has a big old brain when it comes to camera gear and everything. There's the guy, finding people like Esteban Oriel, who's been just very gracious with me and helping me with questions about, getting shows ready and how to print. And there's a great photographer that works here named Anthony Friedkin, who's got like this encyclopedic knowledge of photography. And he's the kind of guy that when I come in and I'm struggling, like I don't know which photos I like, I go in and I see Anthony, and he's very kind about giving me his time, but I'll go, so what do you think of this one? And he goes, I think it's crap. And I go, what? He goes, it's a snapshot. It's not a good shot. And I go, yeah, but why? He goes, don't, why? You asked me my opinion. That's my opinion. You're not going to convince me that it's not your best photo. But then when I go, what do you think of this one? He goes, oh my God, I love it. This is great. Now you really know it's great because he's not afraid to tell you that it's crap. We all, as artists, sometimes, when I write a screenplay, when my buddy Dale writes a screenplay and we give it to our mothers or our family members and they read it, they're going to say it's great because you did it. If you show a photograph to your mother, she's going to go, oh, that's great, honey. That's fantastic. Show it to people who don't have any skin in the game, that are really going to give you an honest critique of what you're doing, but not, and this is key, not what you should be doing. When you take a photograph, when you're out there, when you take a photograph, when you paint a painting, when you write a screenplay, or you write a novel, anything, I was going to say directing, but that doesn't count because that's collaborative. Anything that you have singular control of the creative process in, from when you control it from beginning to end, then you should be creating that for an audience of one. And that audience is you. Don't try to be somebody else. It's okay to emulate. It's okay to be, if you look at my stuff and you go, there's stuff that I want to take and incorporate, that's flattering. But when you are shooting it and you go, I think I'm too close, or I want to frame it this way, or I want to change the light on this face, or in post-production, you say, I want to crop it, or whatever you're deciding, whatever that voice is telling you to do, that's your voice. That's your creativity talking to you. That's your style trying to come out in you. You should never ignore that. You should never ignore that. You should always listen to that voice, because for me, we all want accolades. We're human beings, But at the end of the day, when you take a photograph and you print it out, and we can talk into me personally, I don't think a photograph becomes a photograph until you print it out. But when you stand back and you look at that and you go, that's exactly what I wanted to do, then you're a good photographer because you've accomplished exactly what you want to do. Now, of course, we want people to agree with us and say, wow, you're fantastic. That's unbelievable. You're better than Cartier-Bresson. I mean, we want all these things, but the bottom line is you can only shoot for yourself. I can only write a screenplay and tell the story that I want to tell. I can't tell a story that I think you guys want to hear.
Thank you. So does that mean you're very critical of yourself?
Yes, very critical. And that's a good thing. I think, I'm constantly going through my Instagram feed and pulling photographs off from years ago because they're not as good. They're not good enough anymore. I think, again, I have a very famous friend who's a big producer. And when I was going to go direct my first movie, he took me out to lunch and he said, Brad, it's better to have no film than bad film. The same thing's true with photography. If you want to get a following on Instagram or Flickr or Facebook or whatever you're doing, then all your photographs are basically only as strong as your weakest photograph. People are in such hurry to post content, and that's fine. But as you get better as an artist, pull that crap off if it's not good enough anymore. If it doesn't measure up, and that's a good sign that you're growing as an artist. That's a good sign that the photographs that you are taking now are better than the ones that you were taking a year or so ago. If you put up 100 photographs and you don't take one down, then I would submit you're really not growing as an artist. You're not growing as a photographer.
So you go out shooting downtown a lot.
Yeah.
How many photos would you say you take in one outing, and how many of them do you love?
So I take about 300, because it doesn't cost anything to just shoot it. Um, if I get one, I'm happy. It's a good day. And that frequently doesn't happen. You know, you just come home, you just weren't in the right spot, you didn't meet the right subject, you just missed it by inches. You know, that's part of the game out there. You know, it's like a hunt. You know, you're hunting for the right shot. If I get one shot in a day, if I get two, that's a really, really good day.
You scratch everything? No?
So I deleted it.
298?
Yeah, I just do it. Well, I have one big backup disc that you never know when you're going to want to pull something out. But look at it. If it's a photograph of like taking a photograph of you and you got like I caught you blinking or you got a really weird expression, then that's just taking up a lot of disk space. So I'll delete that and try to get them down from, you know, well, usually from 300 to, when I say if I get one good photo, I'm talking about one good photo in each series, you know. But frequently it's just one good photo period the whole day. You know, you're out there for 3-4 hours and yeah, you know, I know photographers when I hear them at the end of the day, how many shots did you get? You're like, I don't know, like 20 or 30. I'm like, I don't know how that's possible. I really don't know how that's possible.
So when you, like, what's your process for culling all of that? You go out shooting, you're highly critical of what you shoot. You're trying to figure out which ones actually tell the story you want to tell. Can you kind of help us through that culling process?
I'm looking for something that when I see it on my computer screen, let me just get off of that for 1 second before I forget to talk about this. I mean, how many of you guys are interested or think you might be interested in printing your photos? Okay, so quite a few. And how many of you grade on your computer, like your MacBook Pro or your desktop and everything? So that's all fine if you want to go print, you want to put your stuff on Instagram or you want to show your stuff to your friends on your computer. But you have to get a dedicated monitor for color grading if you really want to print. Because all you're going to be doing is doing a lot of work twice, because you're going to grade this thing on your MacBook and it's going to look great, and then you're going to print it out and it's going to be horrible. You need something like a BenQ or a other monitor where they're just very flat. You can calibrate it. You can software calibrate it, but you can also hardware calibrate these monitors. The monitor takes a plug into your computer, and then you put like a Spider or an X-Bright on it, and you do the calibration. And that way you can be pretty much assured that what you're going to see, I don't know if any of you have ever been upstairs in the printing department and you see all the monitors that they use up there. Those are the kind of monitors you should be using if you're seriously going to get into printing. So you're not going to have to do it, because all you're going to have to do is just regrade the photographs when you get into printing.
What do you do with all your photographs?
I do little exhibitions with them. I sell some of them. You know, usually when somebody contacts me on my website and they want to buy a print, and I have it printed up. I got it printed up here with Roger, who is the guy you should go to. He's just fantastic when he does your prints. But my process is I come home and I dump everything on the computer. I use Lightroom basically for nothing more than just to catalog my photographs. I don't grade in it. And I use a program called Silver Effects Pro. How many, you guys know that program?
Mm-hmm.
So that's an incredible, in fact, should I do a little thing?
Yeah, if you want to set, so while you set that up, and thanks for the plugs, at everybody's table, I set up a little calendar or catalog of the classes we teach here at Samy's.
Uh-oh.
And so all the things you've talked about, we have street photography workshops, we have guest speakers like we do today. We have a class on Lightroom, we have a class on Photoshop. We have a class called the Master Print that will actually teach you how to calibrate a monitor, how to get good prints from home. Any of the equipment you need to do that, we sell. And if you want to come to me afterwards with like equipment, printing, all of those, you know, I print from home. I also teach printing here. I calibrate a monitor from home, so I can help you with that kind of equipment. But definitely take a look at this, because a lot of what Brad's talking about, you know, calibrating, printing, a lot of those are we either offer the services or we can teach you how to do it. We can sell you the gear to do it. We're here to help people kind of achieve the level of photography that everybody's looking to do.